The difference between the strong emperor and the weak is simply this: the former makes the world his arena, while the latter makes it his harem. Tacitus, The Annals of Cannae. What the men of the Tusk never understood was that the Nansur and the Chianine were old enemies. When two civilized peoples find themselves at war for centuries, any number of common interests will arise in the midst of their greater antagonism. Ancestral foes share many things: mutual respect, a common history, triumphant stalemate, and a plethora of unspoken truces. The men of the Tusk were interlopers, an impertinent flood that threatened to wash away the observed channels of a far older enmity. Drusus Ecomian, Compendium of the First Holy War. All right, so in this chapter, we get some good comic relief after Eärwa kills himself. So we finally meet Xerius the Third, which he's probably the funniest character in this series, I think. So starting off, we get in this chapter an introduction to the Endymion Heights, the Imperial Audience Hall, which doesn't like have a wall behind where the Emperor stands and talks, which is like a big power move. I mean, it mentions that he's like backlit by the sun, and you know, I think that's pretty cool. It makes the Emperor certainly seem more godlike, which I'm sure Xerius enjoys. And also, it's like, I don't know. It reminds me of, I read somewhere about fighter jets wanting to not have their enemy in front of the sun, obviously, because it makes it hard to see. And so it just sort of, I don't know, reminded me of that. Then Xerius was thinking about how nobody can look him in his eyes, the lower castes and all that, and that he only knows that Xerius only knows Skeos, which is funny because Skeos is skin spy. So Xerius actually knows nobody, which again, it's this chapter really shows off the um, disparity between what Xerius believes and reality, where Xerius is just so totally divorced from actual reality as to be almost completely delusional, but like in a funny way. And also with him being afraid that he can't look people in their eyes, it shows that he's like super paranoid and a control freak, and also I think to some degree a little. It shows a bit of superstition and desire to cling to established ways, uh, even though he would prefer not to because he feels like that's how it has to be done. So, um, and then of course we have the damn it, Proyas's family, Calmamunus and Zynemus and that host. They show up um, to try and sign the indenture. At least that's what Xerius wants. And Xerius is thinking about how he could is going to control the holy war, and it's like he's sitting there and he can't fucking stop fidgeting. So I don't know, just funny. And then of course he's thinking about the sparrows and all that, and how they definitely see him as better than other men because he's the emperor. And again, just more delusions of grandeur. I mean, that's sort of Xerius's thing. So, and then Kelmamunis says something, I think even unintentionally, that gets under Xerius's skin. So Xerius just fucking digs back at him by bringing up Proyas, who had him whipped or something. it's been a couple of days since I read this chapter. I'm just going over my notes. So I don't know. I just think it's funny that Xerius is so fucking petty and he's just playing games that nobody else is. And he thinks he's winning, but it's just like he's the only one playing. Um, oh, a hilarious quote that Xerius thought to himself was, "Few things were as incalculable as men who were at once stupid and thin skinned," which is really hilarious because it's Xerius saying it, and he is both of those things. And it also shows that he has zero self awareness, which is not unexpected. Then when he was talking, yeah, and about how the Empire couldn't, or, was having, or he was talking about like the Empire supplying the Holy Wars hosts and all that. And he like starts talking about suckling and teats and all that. And it's like already he's showing off some degree of perversion. Not that necessarily suckling and teats are perverse, but I just get that vibe from Xerius when he's talking about it. Then, thankfully, Zynemus shows up to be a voice of reason because Kelmamonis is a bit stupid. Maybe not as stupid as Zynemus, so or not Zynemus, Xerius, but Xerius certainly thinks Kelmamonis is daft, while he himself is extremely intelligent, which is debatable. And then a bird shits on Xerius. And of course, he fucking loses it. And this, I think, actually was maybe a good move of his, where he just commands them to kill all of the sparrows, and that's like a pretty intense show of power, not just of power, but of control over his men. Where it's like that's a bit of a dumb request, but they do it anyway, and their archers are skilled enough to actually kill all of the sparrows, which sparrows are pretty small, and it's not like they're using guns, they're just using bows and arrows on sparrows. So that's a bit intimidating, that's as much as Xerius is a fucking idiot, that's a pretty good recovery from getting shit on. And of course, afterwards, he has to try and find meaning in being shat on by a sparrow. And of course, his augur, or whatever his title is trying to pacify him and be like, "Oh no, no, this is actually a sign of great luck. You are very fortunate. This portends great fortune in the future." And the augur does make up like a nice little like great fortune is preceded by, minor misfortune and all that, which I thought was a good, covering his ass move. But then the augur convinces Xerius, or maybe he doesn't convince it, but he tells him that he shouldn't wash his face for 3 days, which I think is funny. Um, I don't know. Like I said, this is just a funny comic relief chapter. And then, of course, we get Estraya's introduction, who is a female character characterized as a whore. Again, well, I say again, so far it's only been Esmonette. But it's going to be Esmonette, it's going to be Estraya, it's going to be Mamara, it's going to be Serway. I mean, every woman in this book is a whore. It's something, Backer. And of course, there's incestuous vibes between Xerius and Estraya, which is gross. Though I think accurately reflective of I think the Nansurium Empire was based on the Babylonian Empire when it comes to relating all of this to the actual Crusades and all that, with people's the People's Crusade and the holy the whatever. What when Kelmamunis does sign the indenture, this isn't in this chapter, but when he does sign the indenture and he goes and gets killed, that's I think an actual parallel to something that happened in actual history, in terms of like our real world crusades. But I'll jump off that bridge when I get to it. Um, Moving on, it's still more hilarious. Xerius just misreading social cues to inflate his own ego, I think is really funny because it reminds me of guys that I've known in my life that have acted like that. And it's just, I find it humorous. And of course, Estraya calling out Zarias' fucking stupid plan. And Zarias coping by just being like, no, it's actually very daring and it's, super smart. He's just huffing that copium to not have a fucking panic attack before meeting the Kishar and Malahet, who he does have. Oh, and so Estraya leaves. She, gets super pissed at Zarias because she thinks that Confus? Yeah, Confus is gonna get killed by the Skilvendi, and spoiler alert, he doesn't. Um, Again, we'll get to it next chapter, but primarily because the Skilvendi don't want to listen to Nair, is partly what it boils down to. I mean, also it boils down to the Skilvendi being unchanging, and thus exploitable. But again, later, later discussion. So anyway, after the kerfuffle with the bird shit and then Estraya, the Kishara Malahet shows up as, I guess, an envoy or a messenger for Scaurus, um, who is is he the ruler of Shagek at this point? I don't remember off the top of my head. Um, but anyway, he's an important figure. He's the guy who had Confus as his slave or prisoner for 4 years. Oh shit! Sorry, I just banged about my laptop. Um, and so again, he's an important figure. He's like one of the first main antagonists of the Holy War proper. Of course, Zarias is the nominal antagonist of the darkness that comes before, insofar as he is the thing standing between the Holy War getting going and just stagnating in Momum. So anyway, Scaurus Malahet shows up. He does the like magical Skype call where he projects Scaurus's face over his own, and it's the quick thing. I think Malahet actually is Skilvendi. It doesn't like say it doesn't say like Malahet is a Skilvendi. It says that his arms are scarred in the manner of the Skilvendi, which is to me a little ambiguous. I'm sure he is Skilvendi because it mentions his pale skin, which is again another Skilvendi feature. And that he's barred from being the Heroshiach or whatever, the head honcho of the Kisharim, because non Kianin are disbarred from that position or disallowed. So, the conclusion one comes to naturally is that Malahet is Skilvendi, and I don't know, Malahet. Maybe it's a taken name because that certainly sounds Kianin to my ears. Anyway, so Skype call. Zarias gets dunked on again by just being a fucking idiot. And I don't know. It sets up that Zarias is gonna sell out. That he's gonna sell out the Holy War, right? Like he conquers X amount of land, and then, or is this? that conversation, or would that conversation be with Kaskamandri? I don't actually remember. Um, anyway, I think this at the very least shows that he's willing to conspire with the enemy, and certainly we know that he's going to betray the Holy War to some degree, and reclaim his lost territories, the Nansurium's lost territories, which good luck with that. Not gonna happen. Uh, Again, sorry for the short episode this time. I'm just sort of getting burnt out doing this, even with how infrequently I'm doing it. Um, so I don't know. I hope whoever listened had a good time listening. I will maybe record another one of these at some point. I don't know. Nair is a really good character, and I like his introduction. He's probably one of the more interesting characters in terms of like character depth and backstory and internal conflicts and how he approaches the world. And I don't know, he's a really interesting character. Xerius is funny, but he's not really that deep. So I don't know, maybe next time I'll be talking a bit more because yeah, there's more to talk about. So until then, whenever that will be.